So let me show you how this works in Reaper. Okay, so I'm going to go to another Wartide character, Akita. She is a snake necromancer. She's a humanoid that uses the power of snakes, I suppose. Anyway, I will go to the reverb plugin here. I'll click on effects, and I would search for reverb, and I'll find reverb 8. Okay, I have some other things on here that you may not have. Reverb 8. I'll click on that, and I'll just go to the let's see, reset. These are the factory defaults. So let's see what Reaper thinks I should have as my default. Let's see.
I've got all the best to offer.
That's pretty cool, but she sounds like she's in a tank or something, and that's not necessarily what I want. So I'm going to experiment with this. Maybe I want her in her snake necro cavern. She's saying these things. Let's just go ahead and roll it and see what I can come up with. I will increase the room size first.
I've got all the best to offer.
We're getting better, but it's a little boomy.
What fools dare disturb my serpent's lair?
All right, it's a hefty amount of reverb. I'm going to lower the wet mix. This is what I want to tell you about before, the wet and dry mix. So the wet mix here is the amount of reverb I actually want in my signal. The dry is the original signal, and this is the process sound. So I'm going to actually start with 0, or minus infinity, I should say. And I'm going to go ahead and play it, and I'm going to gradually bring it up. And this is what you should do with a lot of these very pronounced effects. Start with your wet mix at off, essentially, at minus infinity, and work your way up until you think it's a good place. But you want to keep the audibility of dialogue here. And that's something that gets lost a lot with special effects. It sounds so cool in your headphones, and you render it, and then you ship the game, and you're like, oh man, I over processed it, So let's go down to the bottom. Let's see what happens.
What fools dare disturb my serpent's lair?
Maybe there. Let's see.
Care to dance with my golden serpent?
I'll do one more.
Fools, you can't escape my serpent's kiss.
Okay, not bad. The reverb tail, meaning again the long amount of reflections that are piling up, the amount of time the reverb lasts. I want to kind of maybe decrease it a little bit, and that's what dampening comes in. That's kind of this. Imagine that you're just putting the brakes on the reverb a little bit, and the fiction behind this is that maybe you have some absorption material. Like if she's in a cave, maybe it's the rocks are very like porous or something. I don't know. They absorb material. They absorb sound waves. So let's see if I can fix that.
Care to dance with my golden serpent?
So I think it's a little bit better as opposed to nothing. Let's see.
Fools, you can't escape my serpent's kiss.
You see, it trails off a little bit more, so it's very subtle. But I would go to the high amount.
Perhaps you need a bit of persuasion.
Good. And so there's my reverb. Okay, for Akita. This is just an example. And the cool thing about these plugins is that a lot of times, at least the Reaper ones, will have a bunch of presets for you. Now, once again, they're all musical, bomb tom, cymbal softener, and acoustic in the mix, and all this stuff. Just because it is a musical preset doesn't mean you can't use it for something that is not music, like sound or dialogue, whatever. So you can experiment with these, and you may find something that you like. It really comes down to, it's a very subjective thing, and whether or not you want in this case, the dialogue to sound like the person's in a cave, or you want them to sound like they're, kind of like just in a room, or maybe they're outside. Reverb 8 does not do outdoor ambience very well, if at all. It's more of like enclosed spaces, but there are reverbs out there that do simulate outside environments, and there's more advanced reverbs that use what are called impulses, which are kind of like the negative space of something, and it's like a mathematical model that you can plug into reverb to simulate being in a forest, or being out in in the mountains or whatever. There's all kinds of impulse responses you can get, but that's for my more advanced topics. So this is the basic reverb, how that works. All right, now let's move on to the other category. And probably the most popular other category is the delay category. And delay is when you're going to take a signal. And it's basically, in a way, it's kind of reverb, and you're taking a signal and repeating it after some short interval or a long interval. It depends. It could be anywhere from a millisecond to a whole second, or 20 seconds. If it's like out in the, like I said earlier, like a mountain range or something. It's up to you, whatever application you want to use it for. But there are many different flavors of delay. There's just a delay plugin you may find. Sometimes there's plugins specifically designed for what's called echo, doubling, and there are two kind of special case ones that are much shorter intervals that are called, one's called a chorus and one's called a flanger, or you want to use it as a verb, flanging. Okay. And so echo is really the one that's like, the hello, 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 the long delays. But you could use it as, maybe as little as 50 seconds. Okay. Doubling is this kind of slap back effect that you hear, especially in dialogue when somebody's talking. It feels like reverb. It is reverb essentially, but it's just a very, very short interval. So it's like a da 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 kind of thing when you hear a signal. And then there's chorus, and the chorus is the same as kind of a doubler, but there's this kind of wave-like effect going on with the signal where there's like almost copies of the signal being made, and they're weaving in and out of each other a bit. So it creates a strange phase occurrence where like the pitch feels like it bends up and down, like a warbling slightly. And if you do it too much, it sounds like something becomes detuned a bit. But it can be a desirable effect to widen the sounds of relatively flat sounding instruments, and to kind of make them sound more spatialized. Okay, give them a little bit more depth. And flanging is another one. It says here 0 to 20 milliseconds. Usually do 0. It should probably be 1 millisecond there, but in any event, the interval is so narrow that between the signal and its copy, you get this strange kind of interference pattern. And it's also because there's this filter, this interference pattern called a comb filter. Like, imagine the teeth of a comb as like, I suppose like a whole bunch of notches on a notch filter, and it's just like moving back and forth horizontally and vertically. I mean, not just horizontally, left and right in your frequency spectrum, and it's really kind of messing it up essentially, but it makes this very strange swirly sound. So you got that going on, plus the signal, plus a copy of itself, and you get something called a flanger, and you can kind of manipulate those controls. And I'll show you how to do that in just a moment. Okay, so I've gone into Reaper here, and I've got Rexonor again. I typed in, under add, I typed in delay, and I found REA delay and selected add. I've got it right here. And you'll see a whole bunch of controls, and don't be afraid of messing around with these controls. They're there to be experimented with. And I couldn't possibly go through every slider and knob that's in all these plugins. There's new ones every few weeks that are coming out. They're adding into Reaper and removing old ones and putting in new ones. So with delay, what we're really concerned about is just the delay in milliseconds, the interval, and everything else is kind of like just fun add-on stuff that you can experiment with. But here I'm looking at the delay, and here's Rexonor. Let me just select them. And I was just goofing around with this earlier, and I've got that set up. Remember the doubling effect I told you about 35 milliseconds? What would that sound like? I'm using the delay as a doubler, this plugin. What would that sound like?
Magic power.
Hear that? It's very quick.
Magic power.
And it has a really interesting quality to it. If you go really low, it's like
magic power.
You're getting this very swirly effect there. But usually delays are about here,
Magic power.
or out to here.
Magic power. Magic power.
Now I only have one instance of feedback, so you just get one. Like hello, hello, and that's it. You can increase the amount of intervals that come back to you with this feedback slider here. Let's see what happens.
Dash event. I call upon my powers of restoration. I call upon my powers of restoration.
right? And it's a little too rich in the mix. It's too wet. So I'm going to reduce that all the way to 0 and see what happens
Dash of that.
and bring it up.
I call upon my powers of restoration. I call upon my powers of restoration.
So it's still audible, but you got
Need
effect,
a healing hand? Need a healing hand.
right? And you can go through the presets and check out some other things like this, something called a ping pong, 5-tap ping pong. You can add delay tabs and stack delays one after the other. And this is just too,
Need a healing hand? Need a healing hand.
it was like some horrible, you've been like, um, taken over by evil spirits or something. And
Need a healing hand?
right. So it's going to get really crazy here, and you can stack it up. But you want to make sure that when you create effects, start stacking effects like this, so you don't want to lose the audibility of speech here.